Someone in the apartment was screaming. Had been screaming for a while now. Was it him? No, he didn't think so. How could he scream underwater? Underwater was how he felt. Sunk, waterlogged, drowned. He couldn't see, felt nothing, but he could hear that goddamn screaming, wailing, and it wouldn't stop. He tried to use his arms, but for some reason they wouldn't move. They'd gone so numb that he couldn't even be sure they were attached to him anymore. There was only this deep chill in his shoulders, an arctic stab in both sockets. This was because his arms were chained behind him. They'd been that way for hours now. He didn't open his mouth for fear of swallowing water. He wasn't in a river, nor the ocean, but that's how he felt, submerged. He was in an apartment in New York City, his apartment, where he'd lived with his family for 2 years, being guided back to clarity, to consciousness, by the lead line of another person's agony. In a way, he had to be grateful for this stranger's pain. If not for that screaming, he'd only flail aimlessly in this darkness, lost. He tried to look down, but when he did, his neck got squeezed so tightly he had to open his mouth to gasp. He was in his own kitchen, chained to one of his chairs. A bike lock, a U-lock, had been looped around his throat. It held him tight to the steam pipe that ran from the kitchen floor into the ceiling. Because winter had lasted so long, the steam pipe was on. When he pulled forward and gasped, the lock resisted and he slumped backward. As soon as he did, the back of his exposed neck touched the steam pipe, like a pork cutlet pressed against a hot skillet. He hissed, the same sound as frying meat, and lurched forward, but got yoked in the throat yet again. He had to sit in one position, exactly straight, to keep himself from being choked or burnt. A posture exercise. And there, on the oven, finally, he found the source of all that screaming. Not a person, but a kettle. The flame turned high, and the water inside on the boil. The kettle wailed and spewed a plume of smoke from its snout, a little dragon. It had been sitting on the fire for so long, the water inside roiling, that it jiggled and jumped on the stovetop top. The kettle couldn't wait to pounce. But at least it was only a kettle, not a person in pain after all. The only one in danger was him. For a moment, this even relieved him. Take a breath. But then his body shook all over, the legs and arms clanging in their chains. All this was for him? He was surprised to be alive. The burning kettle wailed a wet threat. His current condition would not last. His mouth opened then and he called out hoarsely. It was a woman's name, but you wouldn't know it. A slurred sound, that's all it was. He tried a second time. Em, he said. If he'd been a boy, he would call for his mother. Since he was a man, he called to his wife. Emma, he tried again. But who could hear him over the kettle? He barely heard himself. And after that third try, a spasm of pain shot up from his left foot, through his thigh and into the small of his back. So bad it made him twist, which teased the bike lock, and in retaliation, it choked him backward again. This time, it was the back of his head, not his neck, that glanced against the steam pipe. It burned right through his short hair, but he controlled himself this time. He didn't lurch too far forward, so he was spared another squeeze around the throat.